Welcome. I want to thank you for joining us. I'm your host today, Dr. Francesca Fujimi. I'm the CEO of MFE Corp and the founder of Your Black Matters. It's an organization dedicated to finding solutions to the issues faced by the Black race. Let me share a little clip with you. I'm a Black female finance executive with 3 decades of work experience in corporate America. I was challenged to create a platform where all people will have the opportunity to understand, influence, and advance Black matters. I was initially fearful about the proposition because of the possibility of a backlash or losing my position in corporate if I speak up. But my son reminded me that it will be a very small price to pay, even if it happened.
All right. Well, thank you, Dr. Fujimi.
So I would ask you what advice you can give me, because I know you're well versed on the continent, is what would be my next step to learn more about doing business in Africa?
You know, that's a fantastic question, but the best thing you can do is visit. Let me introduce you to Black Mystery. This is Black groups' dynamics and perceptions of white people. I wrote this after the George Floyd and the January 6th storming of the Capitol events that took place in the United States. Many people are on the same page regarding mainstream perceptions of Black people. The series of events that started with the pandemic, George Floyd, global protest, police brutality, BLM, Proud Boys, and the January 6th storming of the Capitol enlightened us to view our systems differently. Black Mystery presents an opportunity behind the scenes to hear directly from the source, Black people. The question of revenge surfaced. That is, if Black people have the opportunity to take revenge for what they had experienced, would they want to? The responses were specific. They included solutions to the systemic problems faced by Blacks. Readers have confirmed that the answers to the questions we have been wrestling with lies in Black Mystery. Enjoy it. All right, so that was all about me. So thank you for watching that. Okay, so what I would like us to do is really to start with National Anthem. As you know, in the Black community here in the US, we have Lift Every Voice. So we must start with that.
Lift every voice and sing till earth and heaven ring, ring with the harmony of liberty. Let our rejoicing rise high as the glistening skies. Let it resound loud as the rolling sea. Sing a song full of the faith that the dark past has taught us. Sing a song full of the hope that the present has brought us. Facing a rising sun of a new day begun. Let us march on.
me chills every time. I mean, unfailingly. Whew, okay, what I'd like to do is to introduce our speakers for the day. Our next speaker is Miss Jacquelyn Dupont-Walker. She's the founding president of the World Economic Development Corporation, WEDC, in Los Angeles. Ms. Walker oversees the construction, remodeling, and management of over 200 housing projects in Los Angeles. Ms. Dupont-Walker is a pioneering Black graduate of Florida State University, where she earned a Bachelor of Science degree, and she holds the Master of Social Work from Atlanta University. Her postgraduate studies as a developer was from USC, while she became a substance abuse advisor from Washington University in Maryland. She's a licensed clinician in California and holds national certification. Under her leadership at WEDC, she initiated an intergenerational asset mapping project, engaged in community empowerment, activated a census count initiative for 2 decennial efforts, led in community education, read the Affordable Care Act, and had been involved in the construction of Chesterfield Square, the first retail mall in South Los Angeles in over a decade, creating approximately 600 jobs. Jackie has served in many trailblazing roles, including the desegregation of Florida State University and with Rebuild LA in 1992. She pioneered in defining banking needs in the community as a member of the Bank of America's Social Policy Board and the District 11 Federal Home Loan Social Policy Board and Bank of America's first advisory board for community input. The current mayor of Los Angeles, Mayor Eric Garcetti, appointed her to serve on the LA County Metro Board, and she's the only non-elected official member. Governor Jerry Brown appointed her to Baldwin Hills Conservancy, where she continues to serve as the chairman. Jackie has served and continues to serve in many civic activities and is proud of her involvement in both Rebuild LA and charter reform for the city of Los Angeles, which sought to improve the quality of life for all Los Angelinos. When Jacquelyn Dupont-Walker is passionate, there are no barriers insurmountable, nor horizons unconquerable. Her reach is broad and diverse. She thrives by creating viable communities. Thus, Jackie's involvement is sought nationally in community economic development and social justice. She selflessly devotes skills and resources, utilizing networking as a strategy for creating strong, diversified linkages from a faith-centered perspective, engaging in policy formation, facilitating economic and social empowerment, mentoring new leadership, advocating for cutting-edge solutions, and encouraging institutional change that enhances the quality of life for all people. Her motivation is knowing why God has placed her in this space at this time, but the prospect of making a difference motivates her to stay the course. Not only is every sign that she's doing what she's supposed to do a great motivator, but it inspires her when times are tough, and especially when there is need for good policy and protection of her treasured legacies. Ms. Dupont-Walker is married to the late Beaufort Sonny Walker, and in their blended family, raised and nurtured 8 children, 24 grandchildren, and 14 great-grandchildren. I have known Jackie for many years. If I say she's one of the most influential persons in the city of Los Angeles, it will be an understatement. Ms. Dupont-Walker, I told you already, she is power-packed. She's going to be speaking about influences along the pathway to empowerment. And her focus is King Solomon DuPont, her hero. Jackie, over to you.
Okay, good morning. I think we all have begun to talk about why February, why the shortest month of the year for celebration of Black history. I like to look at it as February being the month that I proclaim the things that I have not necessarily shared with others intentionally for the other 11 months. And so it does become a 12-month celebration. I think of February as a time to give thanks for the walk among the African diaspora for the other 11 months. and to retool and commit myself to the next 12 months. And so for all of us, the celebration is what we make it in our lives. And it doesn't matter that it's just 28 days. That means we have to walk faster during that period. I was also pleased in preparing for this time with you to be reminded that it is not just in the United States, on the continent of Africa, but that Black History Month is celebrated in Ireland, in the Netherlands, in the United Kingdom, in Canada, and it may be celebrated a different time of year. That also extends the understanding that it is celebrated more than just February of each year. I want to talk a little about King Solomon Dupont. I guess it's a part of telling my story also. I am the youngest of 5, born to King Solomon and Eleanor Giles Dupont. They always talked about people that inspired them, and they also inspired me. It was at my father's knee that I learned that my Jesus was ebony, and not the images of the white person, blonde hair or so, and blue eyes. And that was revelational. It meant that I could not say it to everybody, but I needed to understand it. There would come a time when I could say it, and that time did come and has come. I learned about Harriet Tubman, who is known as the female Moses of the era of slavery, about Madam C.J. Walker, who was actually abandoned and was an orphan, if you would call a foster child without a foster home in her era, who understood that when there was a need, there was a solution. And she would absolutely go on to become the first recorded person of African descent in this country to become a millionaire. Not the first female, but the first recorded African to become a millionaire, as she set in place her own business. But it wasn't just for her improvement personally. She was a person who looked at other women who did not have occupations of honor, and she provided for them to have their own business. There were people who became entrepreneurs and owners because of Madam C.J. Walker. And then Charlotte Mccuckey, who started out in South Africa with her singing skills and on a tour with the choir from South Africa, was abandoned in the United Kingdom and was offered the opportunity to come to the US and complete her education, and went to Wilberforce University, became the first South African woman with a college degree who went home to make history there in the freedom movement and with the women's group of the ANC. And then Rosa Parks, who quietly, without ever making a major speech and getting major applause, started what we know as the modern day civil rights movement in 1955. And she trained and prepared for that and went to her humble job as a seamstress, but did not shrink back and had the opportunity over her lifetime to reach back and try to do things for young women. And then Maxine Waters, who we kind of know as a person, I give back my time now. And when she gives back her time, she said what she has to say. And having the opportunity to watch her and work with her and know where she was going. And then as the generation comes on to Karen Bass, who is standing forward as someone to be the first female person of African descent to become the mayor of Los Angeles, who apparently would be seen as walking away from a successful career and opportunities to move forward, to do something because she sees a need. And that's what I got from King Solomon Dupont. He didn't know Karen, he didn't know Maxine, didn't know Rosa Parks, but he started from the knee, preparing us at age 9, when he was co-leading what people don't know about, the bus boycott of Tallahassee, Florida, along with Montgomery, Alabama, where he had to teach us to crawl in our house for fear that someone would shoot in, where we saw crosses burned on our lawn. And the only time I ever saw King Solomon Dupont lose his cool is when my mother was threatened. And he asked my brother to come get his gun. Now, he was not a member of the National Rifle Association. He was a hunter. They would go out and bring back possums and coons and rabbits. But he told my brother, come get this gun because I may use it on someone. Absolutely, I saw that. God had planted me in that family for a reason. As the youngest, I was often razzed, so I learned how to stand with great difficulty, but it was King Solomon Dupont and my mother, Eleanor, who taught me to stand in spite of. And so we went through life watching him take those kinds of stands, only to, at my senior year, after being challenged, to take the Florida test because the college in our time, Florida State, had not been desegregated as the other schools had been. And to take that test and to pass it at a level that we could go to Florida State because there were different scores that qualified you to enter the university. 3 people in my class had to score high enough to go, but I was going to FAMU, the historic Black school that I went to FAMU High. I was just going right across the street to FAMU. I was ready to go. And my father got with the high school principal. And when the announcement was made as to where Jacquelyn Dupont was going, I was going to Florida State. I was stunned. That wasn't where I was going. It wasn't where I wanted to go. Nobody went over there. That was like no man's land. But 2 of us from my class went, and 4 of us walked that water. And I realized at that point that King Solomon Dupont had prepared me for that time. Since then, King Solomon Dupont has guided me in so many different ways in the spirit of the stories he told me about the ones who actually inspired him to stand. Now, I want you to know that King Solomon Dupont only had an 8th grade education in formal school. He actually audited classes in seminary because he was also a preacher and a lawyer, so that he would understand the scriptures. I never asked him why he didn't go back and complete his high school diploma or go forward, but every one of his children did, in fact, complete that education. He poured into us and into me, because I guess you would say, because he was 47 years old when I was born, he had to actually ask forgiveness for what he must have said when he heard I was coming. I can't imagine what it was like to have this little bundle coming at age 47, but he did. He poured that in, and every day I see King Solomon Dupont in the walk that many people take, because as I'm sharing with you the story of King Solomon Dupont, I try to remember and share it with my children and grandchildren going forward. Black History Month is a time for us to begin to tell that story, because it was King Solomon Dupont who said all of my life he wanted one time to go to the continent of Africa. And at the age of 80, I had the opportunity to take him with me on a sojourn and a group led by Maxine Waters. When we got to Ghana and he was walking to the hotel, a gentleman about his age said, "Welcome home." I cannot tell you what that meant to him. He had finally gotten to walk on the ground that he knew his forebears had come from. Now, he passed 3 years later, but he never stopped talking about that trip that took us to Ghana, took us to Nigeria, took us to Sierra Leone, took us to Benin, and especially to the door of no return, for him to see what must have been for his ancestors. Today, I honor the spirit of King Solomon Dupont, which poured into me so much of the history he learned and memorized and lived. He lived a life of sacrifice and giving. And as I started the work here that he wanted me to do in Florida, of building for affordable housing. He called it building for the poor people, but building affordable housing. I will never forget his days. Final story, King Solomon Dupont took joy in watching me walk across the stage at Florida State University. I was one angry sister when I came out. No, they didn't throw eggs, they didn't throw tomatoes, but do you know what it means to be ignored? To be told by a professor that anybody who looks like you can never pass my class, one day after the opportunity to drop that class, and to have on my entire academic record through all of my postgraduate, my master's and my pre-doctoral training, only 1 D. VC didn't give me an F. I earned more than a D, but 1 D, because he wanted to keep that. But it was King Solomon Dupont who said, don't let those trials define who you are. Don't let those things get in your way. And it just makes a huge difference. So today, although there are many people that I honor, that some that I named, some that I did not name, including Richard Allen, the founder of the AME Church, where my dad also planted me in order to make a difference now as the director of social action for the AME Church International. I say we must, more than anything else, tell these stories when we have the opportunity, but more than that, live it. And so if you see me failing to carry out what I just told you, find me on the internet, find me physically, and say you're off your game. It is so important, especially in this period of pandemic, for us to honor the spirit of Harriet Tubman, which King Solomon would have done. She took her flock and led them to freedom, and we must lead our people to the vaccine and lead our people to the testing. It is absolutely our watch, and it is our time. And those who we honor by telling their stories and living through the values that they have implanted in us will always remember that when it's our time and when it's our watch, we cannot fail. Because as Coretta Scott King said, every generation must be convinced anew. So we cannot rest understanding that the story was told one time. What we're learning in today's marketing is that we must say it again and again and again until the listener can repeat it and often can own it as their own story. And so for us to say to our young people, and even our Gen Xers, and those are my children, and so they can tell their children, and I can somehow go past them if they don't tell their children. We must tell our story and then we must live it. We have no reason to ever think we are less than. We have no reason to believe what is said and acted against us, especially our young Black men, that they are less than. If we actually tell the story of empowerment, if we show where we have been in history, if we connect the African diaspora in ways that no one ever intended, as we've spread across this globe, we were intended to be together. And if we don't let the circumstances of crab in the barrel keep us from being together, then we will be the conquerors we were intended to be. I think this is our time. It is our watch. I know why God has me in this place at this time. And the fact that I met Dr. Francesca when we were out building Rosa Parks and wandered into their church and ended up having our community meetings there some 12 years ago and have continued in fellowship with them is a part of what I know God has connected us to do. So I don't know today why she asked me to come and be here. I thank her for doing that. I don't know today if there's anything that I will hear from you that will send me looking for you or something I've said that will send you looking for me. But what's important is to know that as I sit now on the Metropolitan Transit Board, I'm reminded my father was a trucker. Who would have known that when Mayor Garcetti said, come and sit on this board? As I sit on the Baldwin Hills Conservancy trying to protect the land, who knew that my grandfather was a gardener? There's nothing that happens in our lives that we're not connected to. Our heroes and sheroes are right next to us. We must take the time to connect. The African diaspora was unapologetically and without any regrets stand forward. My sisters and brothers, this is our time. This is our watch. Let us not waste a moment doing what God has sent and placed us here to do.
Oh my. Oh my goodness, you blew my mind. Thank you so much. Your every word, every utterance was very touching and it really resonates with me. So I really want to thank you. I have so many hands and I'm going to go straight to Femi Omere. He's from Tanzania. Femi, can you please ask Madam Dupont-Walker your question?
What can I say? I had some questions, and as you were continuing to share with us such a dynamic and rich and spiritually gracious story, you've answered so much. So thank you for that gift. It really was a gift to us all, as was your predecessor in terms of speakers. I suppose, in a sense, I'm asking this question or making a remark regarding something that's key to what you're saying, and I'm not just saying the words of what you're saying, but the kind of symbolism of what you're saying is the telling of the story is creating the framework, is creating the picture that we aim for, regardless of our circumstance. And I kind of know that very personally in terms of where I've come from. And what I'm often asked is, how did you get out from a concrete jungle and make it in a particular way, whatever that particular way is? And it's not about perfection. You had perfect isn't probably the right word, but a wonderful role model and a mentor in your father and friend and so many things that your mom and dad represented for you. But for those of us within communities who may not have that, what do you say? You don't have this powerful individual, or you don't have the teacher that you've heard someone else talk about. How do you self-inspire when it's not there? Because that's what we need to tackle in our communities. Unfortunately, we do have that. We can't deny that. So I know you have something magical to share with us. So please do your stuff.
I'll just say quickly, the village has to be reconstituted. And in this country now, we realize we've put so many of our kids in foster care, and it really has become institutional abuse. It has not been care. And so we have to take the time to create that, to help deal with the rage and anger they feel from not being able to make a simple statement, I'm going home. Mm-hmm. And we take that for granted. And so one of the things that we're doing is working with foster kids coming and who have become homeless through another agency. We can just invite them, take them one at a time just to be with them. And that's the biggest group that I deal with. They're those that find themselves in detention because they have dysfunctional families. So our village has to begin to welcome in the way it actually happened when I grew up. There are people who grew up in some of our families who weren't related. Our parents and grandparents just took them in and provided that. But we need to go back to that instead of letting the system define how we relate. When we see somebody and they have a need and we can serve them, even if we sometimes match auntie who has no children with somebody we know we continue to support. I think we have to start one at a time. We keep looking for the big scale, but if we start one at a time, our groups, our churches, especially, back to not just processing the faith time together. And I love worship, but God didn't put us into the church in order to sit there and worship and go out and feel good about ourselves. It is about doing something differently. And if we put ourselves out there, not only will the direction be there, but the resources will be there for us to get done. Well, we know the story. My grandmother's pot never ran out of food somehow. So when we make that step in that faith walk, we absolutely know how. And I think that's where we start. And then it catches on because people who never thought of it will see the sermon that we live.
Amen.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
Thank
you. Thank you, Femi. I have another hand that is up. Karen Smith is here in the United States. She has a question for you, ma'am. Karen, can you unmute yourself?
Thank you very much. So it's not really much of a question, more of a statement. First and foremost, thank you very much. I think where everything is at is the education. So for example, I read Francesca's book. I learned so much that it opened a discussion with my parents about things that I never knew were going on because I didn't know to look for it.
Yes.
Just listening to you, I went online and I read about your father, and I am just amazed at what he's done and what you have accomplished. Saying, I think it is a matter of not knowing what we can do or how we can help, because I'm going to tell you, I don't like, it's amazing to me how a man just has this in him to go out, and he knows he's going to have trouble. He knows his family is going to be put in harm's way, but still has that to go out and do what needs to be done. But I think those of us who do not know how to do that need a little help. It would be amazing, as you said, if there was one more discussion so that we understand what, it's one of those things, you don't know what you don't know. Until I read Francesca's book, I had no idea about what was going on in Haiti. I had no idea about what was going on in other countries in regards to the money they pay to Britain in order to be free. I think it would be great, and I don't know if you guys are able to do this, but just small things that we can do to just be part of it. And I think that's what it is. Once we understand what we can do to be part of it and make those small steps, it becomes larger steps. It becomes everybody understanding that you don't have to necessarily be the whole change in the world, just part of the change in the world.
Yes.
And I just want to say, listening to everybody speak and everything has been so enlightening, only because things I did not know, now I'm looking up, now I'm understanding. And I would just love to have more information about how to be the change in the world that you want to see.
Yes.
So that was just what I wanted to say, but I did want to comment, your father, you amazing. Just reading his story right now, while you were speaking, I was just like, oh my gosh, I didn't understand he did this part of the boycott. I didn't understand what he's done. So thank you very much for sharing your story. And I look forward to hopefully having more of these discussions and being part of it. Thank you.
Thank you.
My. Yes. Well done, Karen. Thank you for sharing that. Miss Jackie Dupont-Walker, thank you.